Okay, so welcome to our Food and Frequencies Network um, evening call on, good Lord, Monday the 27th of January. Can you believe it? We're nearly into February. Honestly, I don't know where the time is going, but it's flashing by. And so I just can't believe that it's just an incredibly interesting time that we've been going through, isn't it? I think so. Today, I wanted to share a little story about an incident that happened to me last Thursday morning. It's actually a perfect real life example of how inflammation works in the body and why it's so important to manage it. So, imagine this. I was out walking my two lovely little French bulldogs, Peaches and Mabel. Now, anyone who knows French bulldogs know that they have minds of their own. They're almost impossible to train. And anyway, this particular day, I'd walked down to the seafront, and in Paihia, the road I was coming down, the seafront was in front of me, and it was a T-junction, and I looked to the right and there were no cars coming, and I looked to the left and there was a lot of cars coming, but they were turning off to the road I was just coming off. And so I thought, right, I'm going to get myself run across that road because I had an agenda for that day. I was busy in my head. And basically what happened is I ran, and then the next thing I knew, I'm hitting the ground. Knees, elbows, hands. And as I hit the ground, because I still had two dog leads in my hand, I let go of the leads. Mabel, being Mabel, ran over to the other side of the road on the path and sat down and watched. And Peaches, being my lovely Peaches, who's my guard dog, really, she sort of sticks to me like glue. She sat and looked at me, worried as anything. I got myself up, and to be honest, I was a bit shocked that I'd fallen over because I never ever fall over. Well, hardly ever. So when I got up and I decided, right, I better take myself home because I had blood coming out of my elbows and coming out of my knees, and I thought not a very pretty sight, but I felt all right. I was a bit shaken. So anyway, as the day went on, I started to feel a slight swelling, a bit of pain, and a little bit of stiffness. I still could, so I did some exercises I do anyway. So I did some abdominal exercises and a little bit of going up and down the stairs and stuff like that. But the next day, the pain level, of course, as it normally did, had increased, and I was really stiff and achy. And I will go on the scales, and my weight had gone up by a kilo. So this was Friday. And to be honest, I wasn't surprised, as I knew what was going to go on. The day after that, my weight jumped up another 2.5 kilos. So that's 3.5 kilos that my weight had gone up. And of course, I hadn't changed my eating or drinking habits at all. Now, I'm very pleased to say that by the third day, the swelling started to come down, and so did my weight. And I just think I'm really lucky, as I knew what was going on. Actually, I was really pleasantly surprised as to how quickly my body had responded both ways. Weight going up due to the healing process, and weight coming down as the healing process had gone through. So, but this experience I felt was a powerful reminder of what's happening inside the body when inflammation kicks in. So I thought I would cover what happens during the inflammatory process. So your body has an automatic healing response when you have an injury like my fall, or even after an operation, or when you're going through something else, or when you're going through a huge amount of stress, because that perception is a stress in the body. The automatic responses involves inflammatory cytokines. So if we think of these cytokines as little messengers that your body sets out to address the damage, their job is to create an inflammatory response, which increases blood flow to the area, bringing oxygen, water, and nutrients to help repair the tissues. This is why my knees, hands, and elbows swelled up. This inflammation is actually a natural and necessary part of healing. Now, once the body has done its repair work, and in my case, much, much faster than I expected, the non-inflammatory cytokines step in. These are like the cleanup crew. They signal the body to calm the inflammation down, release the excess water and swelling, and then allow everything to return to normal. And this is what happened in my case. By day 3, the inflammation started to settle, and by day 4 today, my weight went back to normal as the extra water retention was released. So what happens when inflammation doesn't turn off? Now, here's where it gets tricky, and why this story is quite relevant for all of us. And for me, it's a good reminder. But for you, if you haven't heard this before, it might be just something that you might realize is what's going on. If the body is constantly exposed to things that cause inflammation, those inflammatory cytokines stay active. They don't get the signal to turn off. So chronic inflammation keeps the body in a constant state of repair mode, and that's where the problems begin. Things like eating inflammatory foods, processed sugars, seed oils, grains, other allergy-causing foods, chemicals, and other irritants can keep those inflammatory cytokines activated. Your body essentially gets stuck in a loop of inflammation, and the non-inflammatory cytokines can't do their job, as they haven't been told that they've got a job to do as yet. This not only makes it harder for your body to heal, but also prevents it from releasing weight. Don't want to say that lose word. The link between inflammation, hormones, and weight loss is a really, really important thing too. So inflammation just doesn't impact swelling or weight retention from an injury. It has a ripple effect on your hormones. For example, leptin, your satiety hormone that tells your brain that you're full, doesn't work well in an inflamed state. This can lead to overeating or constant hunger. Insulin. Chronic inflammation can make your cells resistant to insulin, leading to higher blood sugar levels and more fat storage. Cortisol. Inflammation can trigger stress hormones like cortisol, which also promotes fat storage, particularly around the abdomen. So, the inflammation can cause all 3 of those I've mentioned to be overproduced, and then the body becomes resistant to them, which is a huge issue. Now, I've talked about insulin resistance, cortisol resistance, and also leptin resistance in other calls, which you can find in our Facebook group, but also they're going to be in our resources very soon. So when we're inflamed, our bodies are so focused on survival that things like fat loss, hormone balance, and even energy takes a back seat. It's like your body is saying, I can't focus on weight release right now. I'm busy fighting fires. So you can see how it's so important to reduce inflammation. So it's important to reduce sources of chronic inflammation the most. So by removing the inflammatory foods, the chemicals from our diet, and the artificial additives, we can then allow the body to heal naturally and efficiently. I would also like to say, not just what we eat and what we drink, but it's also what we put on our skin. But the other thing, of course, is what we put in our heads. Because if we put negative things into our heads, that can also affect our whole way of being and can cause another cascade of inflammation. So we can heal our body, however, when we remove these things. And basically, it's a really natural and efficient way of healing ourselves. So we can help those anti-inflammatory cytokines to do their job, which ultimately helps the body release excess weight. So why did my weight spike after my fall? It wasn't fat gain after all. It was water retention caused by inflammation, which is a normal healing response. But imagine if my body had been in a constant state of inflammation because of my diet or lifestyle, that water retention and inability to heal, the ability to heal actually, would have been prolonged, making it harder for my body to recover and balance itself. So by keeping inflammation low with the right food choices, we're not just allowing the body to heal and release weight and everything else, but we're actually really, really getting long-term residual health. And that's what I've really wanted to share today, because I just thought it was an amazing experience. I also would say it made me think, why did I do that? And so I just had a chat with myself, like, why did this happen? Because I do that walk very often, and sometimes I run across the road, sometimes I don't, but I was so busy in my head. I was so busy with what I'm going to be doing rather than enjoying that moment, going out, walking the dogs. There was other reasons behind why I was rushing too, but basically, because I had a really exciting day planned. I really was looking forward to it because there was so much going on, but I was just rushing everything. And so basically the message for me with that was slow down. Don't rush. You'll be able to get everything you need to do without rushing, and you'll actually enjoy it far, far more if you're not rushing with it. And so I'd just like to thank you for listening, because I just thought it was an interesting story for me, and I hope you find it interesting. It was just like, it was sort of a real shock to my system in a way, but it was a really interesting journey too. So anyone else had anything like that happen to them they want to share? Because I think, everyone sharing experiences is a really important component. James.
Karen, so when, because like I've been doing carnivore now, it's must be nearly 7 months. Um, but and fairly clean, fairly good, but when you eat something and that inflames you, what's the process of that? Because it's like, and the lamb that I had that day is a classic, it was when I was eating it, it was like, I don't know, this feels a bit gamey type thing,
Yeah.
And then the next morning it was just like, oh, okay, thank you. And I was sore.
So you'd put on an extra kilo or 500 grams or
Um, no, I wake up sore. So I can eat something that
yeah,
doesn't agree with me and I get inflamed. Like my sacrum is like, remember me? This was a
yeah,
pain you used to get quite
yeah,
regularly. You know that
yeah.
morning when you get up and it's just like you know, toddling off to the um toilet type thing and trying to get yourself upright, It's like, oh, I remember this,
Yeah.
So why is it that food can do that just overnight?
Well, again, it is an inflammatory reaction. So there
Right.
was
Yeah.
something in that lamb. Now, it could be a chemical that had been in that particular bit of lamb that, might have
Yeah.
been an injection, or it could be all sorts of things. It could have been something from the processing plant. It can be this, but the great thing is your body has now become, you're aware of inflammation probably a bit more than you might have been before.
Oh yeah. Because I used to say all the time, oh, my body's just inflamed, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't know what to do with it, you know, or,
Yeah.
I knew what it was food related,
Yeah.
but it was, now it's like, oh, okay, I don't need that in my life anymore.
So it's just doing
But
exactly the same thing
yeah,
as it did with me with
yeah,
injuries. So on my elbows, because my elbow was really swollen and my knees were swollen, it's doing that in your gut. So it's inflaming the
right,
gut. So it's bringing blood and it's bringing excess liquid and plasma and everything so that it can go along and heal what needs to be healed. And the more effect it has, the longer it takes to go.
right.
And the
Okay.
healthier we are, of course, the
The
quicker
quicker
we
it goes.
heal.
Yeah,
Yeah. Does that
yeah,
make sense, Jane?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Pleasure. Hope that helps. Anyone else want to pipe in? Gillian?
Um, no, I've experienced the same though. If I've had a knock or a bump or anything, that the weight goes up. So yeah, and you can just sit to see the swelling and then but your one was quite noticeable with the significant. The gains were significant for you. Um, so yeah, it's just amazing what what the body does to heal.
It really is. And the first time I experienced that where it wasn't food, so this was when I first devised the program. So 2010, 2011, I was doing one of my walks and I'd walked past a neighbor's house and their dog got out. And I'm not afraid of dogs at all. I don't worry about dogs. And this dog came up and it was wagging its tail. And I just said hi. And it just went past me. And then what happened was it's quite funny, really. It just came up behind me and it bit me on the bum, you know. And it's sort of like, ow, you know. So I went and had a complaint with my neighbor. And anyway, it was the next day. And I sort of almost forgot about it really because it wasn't severe, it was just, but I'd put on 1.5 kilos. And I thought, isn't that fascinating? That's when I really, really learned about the inflammatory response of things happening to us, because I knew about the inflammatory response of food, but it was actually having that experience. I went, wow, how quickly that happens, and how it makes sense, doesn't it, really? You swell up, you're going to put on weight, aren't you? And so consequently, when the body starts letting go of things, so for example, when you've got edema and that sort of thing, when you're retaining water, you can retain it in your arms or in your legs or wherever, then you know that there's something not being released. And it could be a cytokine, also can be a lymphatic congestion. So there's a different action there. It's where the body can't eliminate the toxic residues fast enough because the lymph has got congested and isn't being able to move as fast as it needs to, or it's pooling. So there's not the sort of ability to get it through the junctions of all of the lymphatic nodes to go uphill, especially when it's in the legs. So it has to go uphill. So that's why things like slant boards are really beneficial. So I don't know if anyone's heard of a slant board. You know what a slant board is? So basically, a slant board is where we used to get clients to get an old door or something that, or a sort of like a wood that they can lie on, and put it on like a chair so that the boards like that, and you have your head down at the bottom, and then you have your feet at the top. You can't have it too angled because otherwise you really get a real head rush. But if you have it, you start quite low, and then you can gradually elevate. And so basically, it helps so much. It can help with prolapses. So, for example, if you have a uterine prolapse or a hernia or anything like that, then basically, if you do a slant board and you lay on it for a thing, everything can fall back into place, but it also can help with lymph drainage. And there's another thing you can do for lymph drainage is basically to put your legs up against the wall or against a cupboard or something. So you're sort of lying and then you put your feet up before you go to bed. And that can really help drain the lymph too. So there's a few different things that you can do with lymph, but it's slightly different to when you've got a cytokine reaction going on. So there's different types of swelling, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? Hope that makes sense. So yeah, so our circulatory system is very intertwined with our lymphatic system, and so the lymphatics, our waste disposal unit, and it takes toxins away from the blood. So that's why having herbs and things with blood purification and also having lymphatic cleansing works well together. So yeah, I'm yattering. So Rex. Hello.
Hi, Karen. Hi, team. So, inflammation is caused by stress,
It can be, yes.
right? So, if that's the case, exercise could cause inflammation,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right?
If you
Okay.
do too much exercise, exercise, like I was talking about this today with someone, when we are trying to build muscle, that's it will be an inflammatory response, because when you're doing weights, for example, you're breaking down muscle tissue to try and build it up again. So you will put on a bit of weight every time you do weight lifting, or especially heavy weights. If you're doing little weights, it's not so much. But when you're doing heavy weights and you're trying to build muscle, then you're breaking down the muscle tissue. And so the inflammatory cytokines come along and they do some repair. It doesn't normally take very long, especially if you don't do it too much too quickly. However, if you're doing a lot of cardiovascular exercise, it's caused by the inflammation can be caused by the stress response. So by doing too much, it causes too much cortisol. And so by having too much cortisol, then that causes more stress on everything else. So if you're not having a really good diet, for example, then you've already got stress going on with food. So you've got an inflammatory response going along with that. And so if you're doing too much exercise, especially if you're carrying excess weight, it becomes more of an inflammatory response. And so it becomes this vicious cycle. So you see, I see these beautiful souls going out running and they're carrying so much weight. All I can see is a real major problem waiting to happen. So running, exercise is a healthy person's occupation. So when you're in a good weight and when you're feeling really good and you're feeling really energized, then you start doing exercise and you start doing it slowly and enjoy it. It has to be something you enjoy, I feel, because if you don't enjoy the exercise, then it can just be a bit stressful. So does that make sense, Rex?
Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure. Anyone else now? Jennifer is now Gemma. Hello, Jenny.
Yeah, I don't know why my speaker's not working on my computer, so I'm on my daughter's
Oh, that's all right.
device,
That's cool.
and I can't figure out how to rename it because it's not mine. So yes, I am Jennifer.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm just at the stage now where I'm needing to reset. I've totally fallen off the wagon over Christmas and New Year and visitors. And it's been an interesting little exercise for me because, oh, well, I'll be okay for a couple of days and then I'll reset. But I haven't. And it's been a month now. So I gained a couple of kilos, which I thought I would have dealt with by now, but I haven't. So I need to get serious
Yeah.
because I'm not
Yeah.
feeling as good. And tonight's walk, I really huffed and puffed up the hill. So
Right. Okay. Yeah. So there'll be something underlying that.
yeah, I have been under a lot of stress as well. So it was interesting hearing you say what you did just now.
Yeah. So that, Irene. So Irene's just asked the question: would mind stress from work, etc., cause inflammation? Absolutely.
Mm.
And what I've observed with clients and myself is if you have a really full-on stressful day, and it's, even though your diet might be really good, is you can easily put on weight. So it's like an inflammatory response. So it'll be due to cortisols and adrenaline and everything else pumping, slightly different action, but it'll be exactly the same response. So that's why it's so important that we learn techniques to reduce the levels of stress in our lives, because everyone's going through stress at this present moment in time. And it's how we deal with the stress in our lives. And that's, I think, is the biggest one, is how do we deal with what's going on in our lives? Do we deal with it as we take it all on board, that it's all us, or do we allow it to just flow over us? And that's the biggest lesson, I think, if we can learn that, is knowing that we're more than okay. We are love. We are perfect, no matter how we perceive ourselves. And we are not the cause of everything else that's going on around us, but we can empathize, but we can sympathize. We don't have to empathize, as in we don't have to take on board other people's angst. We have our own to deal with. And if we can deal with our own angst, then we can be more helpful to ourselves, but also more helpful to other people. And so we will be going over a few of those things in my new program, which starts in March. But so there's going to be lots of different things in that. So, but we're going to be going through a few of those. We're going to be starting to add a few of those in over the next few weeks as we go along. So many of my ultimate detoxers have probably done some of the things anyway. So if you've been in the ultimate detox, then you probably know quite a few of them anyway. But we will be going through a few new things, new tricks to help us really anchor in our true authentic self. So, I've been talking about authenticity for the last, well, this year so far. It's been a real word for me, or authenticity is, and what that means, of course, to me is basically being who I am as a soul, not what I've built on this persona. As you've gone through life, we build these barriers, don't we? We build these protection mechanisms, we build these, and we lose our childlike wonder in life. And I think if we can get that back, then we don't get affected by stress as much. And so consequently, I think that's where, that's what we're aiming for this year, to bring back the childlike wonder of life. And I think if we can do that, then we're going to have fun in life. That's what we're here for, to have fun, in spite of what's going on. Because there's lots going on, that's for sure. It's all going to be good, though, I feel. Anyone want to comment on that? I'm sure you've got lots of opinions, I can see.
Karen, I was only saying this week that, like, I've had a bit of stress and everything going on, like we all do. And I said, I feel that by doing the carnivore, that it helps eliminate some of that stress, or it doesn't put it up to that height, like I showed you my pantry, it's empty, there's nothing in there. So, there's nothing here to pick at, but I also don't want to either.
Yeah.
Just by following this way of doing this way of eating, I don't have that added stress of, you know, whereas normally would have gone and got chocolate of an afternoon or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever it might be, you know, going
Yeah.
home on the way home and going to the supermarket and grabbing something. It just doesn't happen now, you know. So I do feel this way of eating eliminates or eases some of that stress for me personally, anyhow.
I agree with you 100%. I do
Yeah.
believe the carnivore lifestyle or carnivore diet, if someone's just doing it to sort of do a major detox, is a great way of really leveling everything so that you don't have the cravings, you don't have all of those sorts of things really going on. And so consequently it's like it's really valuable way of really resetting ourselves. And so there's some people who don't want to do it, and that's absolutely fine. But I think the carnivore, if you can do carnivore, even for a shortish period of time, I think you can reset your body. So, but yeah, I agree. I don't have any cravings for anything. You know, I've only had a few, I've never had a real, well, I don't say never, but over the last sort of 30 years, I haven't had cravings for things like chocolate or anything like that. But I've had cravings for savory stuff and chippies and things like that. So the reason I didn't have cravings for many things is because I had to be gluten-free from 1990. Otherwise, what happened is I ended up in bed for 4 days. And I have, you know, ever since being gluten-free, I haven't needed to snooze in the afternoon, you know. And now I've just got energy to burn most of the time, so it's great. I don't get tired in the afternoon ever. So, you know, I'm lucky because I found this way of living really. And so, you know, and there are things that I do make and I really enjoy, but I don't have to have, you know. So like my chocolates, you know, that I make. Yeah. So yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you for the feedback, Jane. Awesome. Anyone else want to say anything? Sharon, you're off mute. Anything you want to pipe in?
I just agree with you 100%. And I was going back through my life as you were talking about your tumble and thinking about my tumbles. And not that I've had many, and I've never ever equated putting on weight with a tumble.
No.
But it makes perfect sense. It's logical.
Yeah, it is.
I was also thinking how profound all this wonderful information is and how beautiful the inner workings of our body are. And my preference is to have schools where everybody is taught this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
We're such a masterpiece, aren't we? We really are.
I saw my own selenium crystal the other day, and it's the most beautiful blue I've ever seen. And I thought, wow, we're just wondrous beings.
Yeah, I agree 100%. We're, you know, we are just magic. You know, when you see the healing that we can do, the changes we can create.
Yes, 100%.
And especially if we believe that we can change them. And that's it. That's one of the major ones, is we believe that we can make changes. And we lean into that belief and just keep leaning into that belief, then it'll happen, you know? That's the magic. That's the magic of life, isn't it? Magic. Yeah. All right. Any more for any more? Any questions about anything, really? It doesn't have to be about what I've just talked about. If you've got any questions about what we've talked about in the network, in anything else, or anything you want me to talk about. Silence. So next week we'll be in February. And so February is all going to be about habits and addictions. And I'm going to be talking to lovely Rex next week, so I'm interviewing him, so that's cool. So because he's going to be chatting about his experience with habits, and he's going to be sharing his wisdom, aren't you, Rex? Yeah, awesome. Awesomely awesome. So if you have any questions around habits and addictions and what you perceive to be a habit or an addiction that you have, then it'd be great to hear from you, because we make sure we cover everything that you need to actually help you keep improving and keep being the best you can possibly be. So that's what our topic for February is. So yeah. So Pam's having fun with her cell phone, hey?
No, I was meaning that's one of the addictions that we have now is these damn cell phones. They're huge problems to scroll,
Oh.
scroll.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's really interesting, actually. It's one of the things I was thinking about the other day. And I made a commitment to myself at the beginning of the year that I wasn't going to pick this up until after I've had my morning drinks and walked the dog and done everything else before 9:30. And I've been really good with that. And also not to pick up at least for one day at the weekend. And oh my gosh, it's such a release. And also what I'm actually thinking of doing is, when, I mean, everyone's here is sort of this, not the same age, but you'll relate to this, is when I was a kid, or when I was at work or anything, up until the sort of 90s, well, yeah, mid to late 90s, is people could only really get hold of us when we were at home or when we were at work. The rest of the time, we could just be. And so I'm actually going to attempt to do that as much as I possibly can, because I agree with you 100%, Pam, because we can waste so much time with these devices. And what are we actually learning? Sometimes you get an absolute gem, don't get me wrong. But are we putting our lives on hold because we're scrolling for news, scrolling for something to have happened? Or are we going through it to look for catastrophe, or for something, or are we looking through it for something good to happen? Or what are we trying to do? Are we trying to live vicariously through this? Also, I would say, if you look at so many people nowadays, they take their phone, they might go to a concert, or they might go to a party, or they might go to do something, and they're always looking at it and they're taking photos. So they're not actually really engaging in what they're actually doing. They're living through a phone. And I find that really interesting. And you see gaggles of people on their phones, and they're not actually talking to one another. I think there should be an unwritten rule. When you go to a meeting, or you go to out for a meal or whatever, is your phone stay in your pocket, or they stay in a bag, or they're away from the table. So I think that's what we should all do, really. So maybe when we meet up, we'll make sure that happens. Because we will meet up soon, hopefully. I think we're going to be doing another Tiki tour, Deb and I. We haven't set the dates, but it's probably going to be in March. So if you have any venues or any groups that you'd like us to come and talk at, do get in touch. So on that note, being as no one else has got questions, I'm going to say thank you for joining me, and this recording will go up as soon as I've processed it. And have a magical week, and I'm really, really looking forward to hearing how you're going. So have fun, And don't forget to journal. Don't forget to journal. Really important. Journaling. Quite an intense thing to do, but it's good. It's worth it. Okay. Au revoir, lovelies. Have a magical time. Speak soon. See you on Wellness Wednesday if you need any help. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.